All right, good morning again, and a huge thank you to Congresswoman Custer and to the New Dems for our strong partnership, which we have now taken to a new level with the Freedom Agenda. We look forward to continuing our work together moving forward to showcase how Democrats are the party of freedom and of values that Representative Wilhelm talked about: opportunity, community, and democracy. Now we're going to dig deeper into the Freedom Agenda with a series of conversations on how we implement it, including in messaging and through policy. We start with Florida House Democratic leader Fentress Driscoll, who previously won a unanimous vote to head her caucus and who, in the midst of a lot of political challenges, has brought common sense solutions to her state's most pressing issues: education, affordable housing, public safety, economic opportunity. And she's joined by Mark Riddle, president of Future Majority, a strategy and creative center that advocates for a freedom-focused agenda that makes American workers the hero of our nation's story. Mark and Representative Driscoll, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's really hard to follow Simone, so, I'm not even going to try. We'll geek out a little bit this morning. It's also a little intimidating to be on the stage with my dear friend Fentress, so I'm going to do the best I can. A couple of quick things before we get started. This is like old home day for me here. Debbie, Helen, Andrea, been doing it a long time. Thank you. Everybody should owe these great patriots a round of applause. They've been in the trenches. Debbie said 30 years. I was like, oh shit, I've known her 27 or 8 of those years. So thank you for all you do. My friend Mitch Drazen, who's like my personal political director, he'll give you a list, you do it. Trust me, it works. I see Fitz back there. I see Lorraine Osley, who, we've known each other a couple years. Thank you for being here, Lorraine. See Mayor Fisher, who's a great mayor in Louisville, Kentucky. I see my dear friend Bob Morgan is here. We got to share a hug this morning. I actually met him in Israel. So, you're a dear, dear friend. So we'll get started here, but I'm missing some people I wanted to shout out to. I'll see some folks later on, but the work that Helen and Debbie and their whole team has done is incredibly important in helping build the bench. A little bit about me. My name's Mark Riddle. I am a longtime political hack. I did campaigns for a long time. And then after the 2010 election, I joined and headed up a group called the New Leaders Council. We grew to 50 chapters around the country. It was a training program for young progressives. There's some NLCers, I believe, in this room and some good supporters. And then after the 2016 election, like a lot of other folks in this room, were like, oh shit, what are we going to do? Frankly, a couple people with a few bucks in their pocket came to me and said, well, what do you think? And as Mitch will tell you, I told them what I thought. They hired me and we got to work. So I wanted to start this morning, a few minutes, with a little bit of data and a little bit of conversation points kind of as we move forward. So I have a clicker. I'm not the most technology person. So Future Majority was launched kind of in early 2017. We got together a lot of really smart people from around the country, folks in Hollywood who are the best kind of writers and script writers in the world, pollsters, marketing people, you name it. We spent a lot of money. We ended up creating this little pamphlet that became kind of the calling card for us as we began. And we thought we needed to rebuild at that time what the D was, right? When people walk in the ballot box, right, most people don't know candidates very well, particularly folks in this room, right? Run for president, they know you. You run for U.S. Senate, there's a lot of money. Fentress, how many people outside of your district actually know you, even though you're the House leader?
So few.
Right, okay. So we thought we needed to rebuild the D. And we thought we needed to rebuild it around a few things. So we did a lot of research and homework. Other people did as well. And we landed on the basic American value of freedom. for years and years and years doing campaigns, I saw the Republicans would use that word as a wedge on anything that they could humanly possibly name it to, and nearly every building they own here in Washington, D.C. And so we're like, let's take that back. Fairness, fair shot, as we call it, is in the DNA of Democrats, particularly President Joe Biden. And then we thought, all elections are about the future. President Clinton, who we all used to work for now way too long ago, always talked about every election's about the future. We put those three words together: freedom, we use fair shot, and future. We started shopping this around, and people were like, hey, okay, this makes some sense. I never thought that I would be sitting here doing this. We've now polled 196,000 voters in primarily swing districts around the country. We work very closely with leaders around the country, just very honored by all of that. What our research shows is that protecting freedom moves voters to trust Democrats. This is a very fancy chart put together by a pollster. You all get those things. But it only really means one thing. Protecting individual freedom actually moves the marker more than anything else, period. And we talk a lot about lowering costs and sick guns and creating middle-class jobs, all these other things. People go right to values first. And the reason why I think this works, and this works in this moment, is because the D can actually equal, some people said deliver, right? Freedom. Because you know what the R equals right now? Donald Trump. Right? The R is about one human being, and the D is about more than this. And so the conversation this morning about President Biden and polling and blah, blah, blah. Guys, we've been kicking their ass since 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and last night in the elections, right? All over the country. We rebuilt the Midwest, did all these great things. So buck up, everybody's gonna be okay, right? The great leaders in this room. But what we see is if you drive this message, it works. As I said, Democrats and allies have been planting this flag all over the country. Organizations are changing their name, which I think is great. I'll give a lot of credit to Senator Patty Murray, who we briefed early on, and Stephanie Shryock, who was like, oh yeah, this makes some sense in and around reproductive freedom, reproductive rights. She gave a speech at Emily's List, kind of started a lot of the snowball in this, and a lot of these groups have done amazing work on top of this to really hone in on this message and how to talk about these sorts of issues. So A+ to everybody. It was kind of a fun day when President Biden launched his reelection for president using the word freedom. I think it was a good idea. The president gets a lot of grief, because he's president, but the guy has done a great job, and he's been a very good president, and he stands every day up for freedom. He stands up for a fair shot, and he really is building the future. I spoke to the Kentucky State Chamber on Monday, mayor, 600 people there, mostly Republicans. I said, what do y'all have to complain about? Come on, guys. Infrastructure, chips, jobs, 2 huge EV plants, right? They're like, oh yeah, but they get into the politics. So we got this little QR code. We got other videos and such. I know the leadership of Debbie's group will send this around. We can kind of look on our website for other kind of great examples of videos. Case study, it's also being used at the kind of state and local level. Governor Josh Shapiro ran on taking back freedom. If you look at kind of the credibility issues on his messaging, majority of all voters, 87% of Democrats, 48% of independents, right? It gets you to the coalition that you need. And we have an opportunity right now, I think, to redefine the entire debate around freedom. This is not a new concept. FDR won, 4 presidential races around this? Woodrow Wilson, we just kind of forgot about it for a while. It's not something new. I think we can really lean into this. It works really well with Democrats. It works really, really well with independents. Works very well with younger voters, and works very well with suburban women. And early on in our project, we got a lot of questions about communities of color and the word freedom. Remember, Dr. Martin Luther King's march was actually the March on Jobs and Freedom. kind of forget the second half of that. And so historically, it's ingrained into these sorts of fights. And so the numbers work. The interesting thing is the Republican Party talks a lot about it, but they're really kind of harkening back to the 1700s, right? And they're sort of, it's like if you are a white male landowner, yeah, and have 3 mules and whatever, right? You have freedom. Not everybody else. Yeah. So I think we can just hammer away at them in this. When you start looking at individual arguments, these things test in the 90s, 80s, 70s, right? Citizens of legal age should have the basic constitutional freedom to express their voice at the ballot box. The young lady from Texas talked about democracy. Freedom and democracy go hand in hand. It works. Happy to share all this data. My slide decks are usually like 100 pages long, as some of the people in this room know, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but happy to share them. Please go to our website. Happy to give you cards or whatever. Happy to add you to the list. And you got to tailor it for your local district. I'm going to kind of end here before I turn it over to the leader. There's some talk about Bidenomics on the previous panel. I don't know who came up with that term. It baffles me. The interesting thing is not really part of his ad campaign, right? I think it's something that like somebody read in the newspaper, Wall Street Journal, like, oh, we can battle back on that. It's really not going to be part of the campaign. But here's what we're advocating for next. We talk a lot, and there's been a lot of work done kind of on individual freedom. Some of the cultural issues the mayor talked about so eloquently before, et cetera, et cetera. We think we could really actually own financial freedom. Bidenomics is actually financial freedom, right? Bidenomics is actually giving people a little room to breathe, right? That's what people want. They want security, they want opportunity, they want to prosper, right? They want their own financial freedom. And when they get in trouble, they want to hand up. They want to hand out. They want the government out of their lives. And so we've been testing this a lot. It tests exceptionally well versus kind of the frame that is coming out of DC right now in and around the Bidenomics thing. If you drop the word Biden, obviously, it works really, really well. I don't think this surprises anybody in this room, but it's something we're leaning into. We'd love some input on it. But I think, if the election is generally about economic and pocketbook issues, I think we can lean into that as the agenda that is being presented by the New Dems, the New Dealers, A+, right? I think we can lean into the financial and economic arguments of this. We've historically, as Democrats, had a deficit on these arguments. They tend to trust Republicans more on the pocketbook issues. And I think there's a good 1-2 punch here. I think we talk about financial freedom, but also is an anti-corruption message. And I think we can pin corruption right on Trump, Jared Kushner, basically all the thieves and extremists. And I think it's a good 1-2 punch going into this election. I think if the election's framed around that, we win. I feel optimistic about that's where the party's headed. And congratulations to everybody in this room who put the suit on every day and fight the fight. If we can be helpful in any ways, please let us know. I'm just going to stop there. People can sign up or whatnot. I'm going to turn it over to this amazing leader because she's much better at speaking than me. I met her kind of on a date, kind of weird thing at Alex Sink's home. Not our date, but, it was kind of strange.
Get that clear,
Well, just be clear. Anyways, make me laugh. Thank you for, that. And then I ended up with, anybody knows Alex Sink in Florida, you used to go to her house and it's like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And she's like, bring all your PowerPoints. We're going to do a messaging session. The house is full of people. So I had the honor to meeting the leader there, and now we work really closely together. I moved to Florida, and so going to try to fight the good fight down there with her.
Yeah, well done. Let's give Mark a hand, please. Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that date part, just in case, Kobe's watching back home. My boyfriend, he just,
we
love
all
you,
love
honey.
Kobe.
Love you, honey. All right. So anyway, this has been just a wonderful conversation. I love the first panel. Shout out to you all. wanted to give a couple of thanks to Senator Osley, who's over there, without whom I would not be a New Dealer, for Christine Hunchovsky, my dear friend who serves as my whip on my leadership team. Thank you for encouraging me to come. And to Debbie and Ben for having so much patience. I know it's taken me a while to get here. I've been a New Dealer for a few years now, but I'm so excited to be here with you all. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we've been able to operationalize messaging in the Florida House Democratic Caucus. Because I hear all the time that Democrats are really bad at messaging. On the center left, we're bad at messaging. Actually, I think we're very good at messaging. I think we have wonderful pollsters and folks like Mark with his organization that gets the data, gets the research, and puts it into a digestible format so that we could use it. Where we tend to mess up is with operationalizing that information. And so how I wound up at Alex Sink's house that day, actually, I don't even think I knew we were going to talk about messaging. She was just like, I'm getting some friends together. If you know Alex, that's how she sounds. I'm getting some friends together at my house. You should come. I said, okay. And so the next thing we know, Mark is giving this presentation. And I'm a big believer that when the universe wants to birth something into existence, it starts happening and springing up organically in many different places. And so as Mark stood there talking about freedom, my friend who was with me kind of nudged me, Kristen, she was like, you should tell him what you've been working on, what you've been thinking. And that's when I kind of told Mark, like, so in the Florida House Democratic Caucus, I'm thinking about taking us in a different direction. I'd like us to lead in a values-based way when we talk to voters and talk about the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. That is our messaging tagline, the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. Now, what I love about this is that it works across all levels. So my members who are more moderate can use it. My members who are more progressive can use it. And I promise you that if you think of any policy that you want to be for, because we have to be for, give voters a reason to vote for us, not just, being against the other side, any policy that you can think of would fit within this framework. So it works really well, because what happens is that my members who are progressive stand at the podium and use that framework. My members who are more moderate use the same framework. And lo and behold, it sounds like we are singing from the same hymnal, because we are. So rather than focus on the individual policies so much, which we do have a platform, and I'll run you through that in just a moment, we focus on how do we package this in a message-based way that allows us to connect with the voter first, and that's leaning in with freedom. So some tips that I have for you as you think about how to operationalize this within your own spheres of influence. The first is to follow the data. You have to follow the data, and here's why. There are a million people who are going to come to you with their thoughts and ideas about what our messaging should be. Okay? I had a very dear friend who was like, well, I don't know about freedom because, black people have never really been free, which is true. We're still working on that. We're still working on that. But like Mark pointed out, that was such a big part of the civil rights movement. And while that idea that my friend had, kind of challenging the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe was something for us to consider, in the end, the data showed us that our messaging framework beats our governor's false narrative of freedom over 56% of the time when we use it effectively. So I was able to say to my friend, thank you so much for your thoughts, but we're going to stick with the data on this. Or people may come to you with ideas, and you can ask them, where is your data on this? I would love to consider that. Where's your data? And I find that by following the data of good organizations like Future Majority, you're able to cut out a lot of the chatter and a lot of the distractions when it comes to your messaging. You need to keep it simple and keep it clear. The second thing that we did was have trainings for members of the caucus, but even before that, I did the work of trying to bring some early adopters on. So having those one-on-one meetings like, hey, I'm thinking that we could use this for our platform. What do you think? Having those conversations. You know the technique, right? Where you share ideas and you kind of get people to think that it's their idea, and lo and behold, then it's, our idea. So doing that painstaking work, because sometimes on the center left, or really in any organization, you just don't want to see your idea kind of get its wings clipped before it ever gets the chance to fly. So having early adopters was really important, making sure that some of them were folks with big microphones, some of them were folks who were quieter, and so we had kind of a mix of the progressive, the moderate, and that was really helpful. And then we did trainings not just with our own members in the caucus, but we actually then did trainings with the Democratic Party at the state convention. We held a big training, and we would talk about this freedom frame with any of the clubs and caucuses we could get to, whatever county DEC we could get to. We make sure that we would talk about this so that they were also on the same page and had access to this messaging and could use it and amplify what we were doing. The third thing is we developed a platform. And regardless of whether you're in state government or local government or even federal government, there's a way to take this narrative and distill it down into a platform. And I love the Freedom Agenda document that NewDEAL has shared. I look forward to diving into that more. The way that we digested this in Florida was with our Freedom to Be platform. Freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. On the healthy piece, we talked about expanding Medicaid. Florida ranks 49th in the nation for health care. We are one of only 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid. By expanding Medicaid, we would cover roughly 800,000 Floridians who are currently without health care. And it would save roughly $200 million in general revenue in our budget every year. It's actually a really big deal. So we talk about this in terms of expanding access to high quality, affordable health care. That's the healthy piece. Prosperous. Inflation was running rampant throughout the country, and it's come down in most places, but not in Florida. There's something going on with our economy there. We tend to be a very low-tax state, a low-wage state, and unfortunately, the cost of living is outpacing the wages that folks are making. Property insurance is a big issue for us. We are ground zero for climate change and climate rescue, and it means that the American dream is slipping from folks' hands, and then even when they attain it and purchase a home, they cannot afford the property insurance to protect that investment. So we talk about property insurance, property insurance, property insurance all the time. The governor can be talking about banning books, and we will find a way to work property insurance into that rebuttal because the Republicans are losing on it. They've been in charge of our government since the 90s, and they need to own this failure because what they've been doing is giving $3 billion bailouts to the insurance industry and not providing any relief for homeowners. So we have a bill in our platform to lower property insurance. Housing affordability is also very challenging for Floridians right now. Florida's become a place where it's too expensive for Floridians to live. So we talk about how to repurpose old shopping centers and urban blight for the purposes of affordable housing. Investing in small businesses. We all know that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and we should not cede that point of being good on business. We should not cede that to the Republicans. So we came up with a grant program, really more like a loan program. Florida is known as a capital desert when it comes to startups and small businesses who are looking for capital and looking for those sorts of resources. So we wanted to find a direct solution. Accountability and education. This is the last piece of our prosperity plank. And I don't need to tell you what's been going on with education in Florida. You see it. You see it. You know, where you have a governor who stands up at a podium and says that slavery had conferred a benefit on the enslaved. When he stands up and he says that African American history has no educational value. When they're banning books. When they refuse to teach our kids accurate history. Meanwhile, it's the greatest fleecing in American history because they continue to pass these voucher expansion programs that allow their friends basically and millionaires to get their hands on these vouchers. There were reports over the summer that millionaires were using these vouchers for vacations to Disney. Oh yeah, you thought they didn't like Disney. Well, they like it when they can go for free. And they were using it on big screen TVs, right? So our bill just says if we're going to have charter schools that are run by for-profit corporations, if we're going to have these voucher programs, which are taking our taxpayer dollars and giving benefits to millionaires, we need to know how this money is being used. We need to hold these schools and the education system accountable. So that's the prosperity piece. And then the safety piece. You could look at this in many different ways. You could even look at this with respect to climate change and climate rescue. But in our caucus, we happen to have an expert on gun safety. That is Representative Christine Hunchofsky, who also served as the mayor of Parkland during one of the gravest mass shootings in American history and led that community with calm and with care and with compassion. And so Rep. Hunchofsky carries a bill for us on common sense gun solutions. Not talking about taking a firearm or a gun out of the hand of any law-abiding gun owner, but just being very thoughtful about our policies and how we can rid our communities of gun violence and keep them safer. So that is our Freedom to Be platform. That is the 4. The fourth point that I would mention is we still have to be against a lot, and that's the freedom to be piece. That's how we use that freedom to be frame. You have the freedom to be, you have the freedom to not have politicians looking over your shoulder in the exam room trying to make medical decisions for you on those personal decisions of heart and home. You have the freedom to have your kids read books. You have your freedom to have kids, learn accurate history. You have the freedom to go and worship at your place of faith and not worry about whether or not you're going to come home because there was a mass shooting. So we use the freedom piece to really push back as well. And then the fifth thing that I would say, my last point, is just you have to reinforce it, and that's called message discipline. And it's at the point where during committee weeks and legislative session, I hold media availabilities at least once a week. The press can hop on. They can ask any questions that they want. We take the first few minutes, though, to drive our message for the week. What do we want them to write about? What narrative do we want to lead with? And you can bet that every time that I'm on that media veil, I'm going to say the words that every Floridian deserves: the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. And I've said it so much that sometimes when they write about me, they include that tagline, and that is how it works. And yes, you will feel like you are blue in the face, and yes, your caucus members will roll their eyes, but you have to say it over and over and over again, because honestly, the media doesn't really cover Democrats in the same way. I have found in my role as leader, they love to cover our slip-ups, they love to cover our mistakes and amplify those. They don't like to talk about the things that we do well, and that means that we have to be our own best advocates and carry that message to the point of saturation so that it begins to carry and penetrate into the market. So that's a little bit about how we've been able to operationalize in Florida. I'm so happy to talk to any of you and brainstorm with you about how you can do that in your respective places and with your platforms. Because like Mark said, I think as Democrats, we have a lot to be grateful for and to be proud of, and we need to own it. It's time for chin up. We are at war. We need to own this. Our democracy is at stake, and we have so very much to offer and be proud of. So thank you.